what we do here is go back.
And there we go. I think we're live. Yes, we're live. Good evening. It is Saturday the, I love it, this works now, the 13th of March 2021. How you all doing tonight? Hopefully you're all fed, watered and ready to have a few laughs. Avza? That's Bristolian if I ever heard it. Hopefully you're ready to have a few laughs with us tonight on the stream and also talk some tech. Tonight, as you've probably guessed already from the thumbnail, we're going to be talking about medium range, basically CPU compounds. Very, very boring, possibly very technical, and you might learn something.
But you get a good night's sleep.
You will get a good night's sleep. Definitely get a good night's sleep after this. I definitely will. Today I've been testing some various thermal compounds that most of you have probably seen or have used personally. Also, we will be following up this stream with like a more condensed version of this. So if you get bored or fall asleep or whatever, then you can pick this up in a more bite-sized chunk, which will be recorded hopefully tomorrow or some other time. But also what we're looking for from you guys out in the internet is your suggestions. What pastes would you like me to use? I'll be going through, I'll show you obviously the ones I've got that we're using now, but I want to hear from you. What are your go-to pastes and compounds? What ones would you recommend? What ones would you definitely not recommend? Really interested to know. It's one of those things, I've been doing this for quite a few years, probably since the late 90s. So I've seen a fair few compounds in my time, and obviously there are some which you just stick with all the time and just keep on using. But I'm always open to new alternatives, trying new things and all that kind of jazz. So let me know what your favourite compounds are. I'll do some quick hellos to those of you that are in the chat already with us this evening. And we've got Paul Bakewell with us, Ugly Bob, as always. Outlaw Fett is also with us. David Aitken says good evening. Hopefully David's got his speaker set up now and is annoying his neighbours. Irie Wolfman says, am I early? Yeah, I think I am actually. I think I was supposed to start at 5 past, but hey, you know me. Never start on time. I'm either early or late. Never on time. Skystalker's with us as well. How you doing, Skystalker? Hopefully you're feeling a little bit better right now. Fractured Life is with us and says, toothpaste. Yeah, I didn't use toothpaste. I was very tempted to use some toothpaste as part of the testing procedure. I didn't want to wreck a perfectly decent CPU in the process. So Hugh Wong says, right on Mike. How you doing? Dom says, evening all. Hopefully everyone have a great evening and ready for a stream. Hope so too. Wild Bill's with us says, hello Mike and Kath. Did I miss something? Don't think so. Maybe. John Sullivan's with us, says good evening. ClickTech Kev is giving us a dab. And there we've got Ugly Bob. Ugly Bob's thrown in £5 into the hat straight away on the super chats, and we got a little bit of a a different thing going on now with the super chats. Basically, the disco ball has gone, as you can probably see. It was normally there. And now I've got a RGB strip which runs around the outside edge of the desk, which actually helps in many ways. It helps me with filming, but also it's pretty darn near impossible to miss. And also saves me knocking it off the edge of the shelf every time we get a super chat. So thank you, Bob, for the super chat. And he says, Dave, I can hear your new speaker set up here in Newcastle. It wouldn't surprise me. Those are some pretty loud speakers. And if you want to see the review of Dave's new speakers, he kindly lent them to me for the unboxing process. We've recorded the video, it's uploaded, so it's just a matter of time before it's released. That was for the Logitech Z533 2.1 setup. Incredibly loud. Actually very, very loud. The bass and the warmth on those speakers is something to be truly savoured. I really did enjoy reviewing those, so again, thank you, David. We do appreciate that a massive, massive amount. Right, who else we got? So, Paul Bakewell, blah, 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 etc., etc., yada, yada, yada. Who else have we got? Slim Pickens says, howdy everyone, hope everyone's day is good. Yeah, hopefully your days were good. It's been a bit of a mixed bag of weather today. It started off actually really sunny in the morning, which I actually did wake up and see some of the sun. Then it went kind of overcast. Then
because I got up first and opened the curtains.
Yeah, if Kath hadn't got up in advance of me getting up and opening the curtains, I would have never have witnessed the sun at all. So I'll yeah, stick my hands up to that one. After that, it went a bit overcast, very, very dark. I looked out at the sky and it's like, it's looking a little bit dark out there. Not good at all. Then we had hailstones the size of kind of frozen peas. I'm glad I wasn't outside for that. I was fortunately inside in the nice and warm, testing these thermal compounds, which yeah, was a darn sight nicer than being out on the streets. So yeah, I missed that. And yeah, it's just been generally very, very windy, very stormy, kind of cold, then moderate. The weather in the UK is absolutely screwed at the moment. Hey John Sullivan says, did you use an electric toothbrush? No, I didn't use an electric toothbrush to get the thermal paste out of my teeth. Irie Wolfman says, my PS5 DualSense controller has just died. That's the second. Not impressed. Technology, as it gets more and more advanced, gets more and more bad, in my personal opinion. Name one piece of technology which has actually become more reliable as it's got faster or smaller. There isn't really any that I can think of.
Or anything that's been
anything.
changed, to be honest.
Matthew Day says, calculating time to put microwave chicken curry on. Do it now. What else we got? Mark Proctor says, evening all. James Miscellaneous says, never liked this music. I'm sure Otis McDonald is very pleased with you for saying that. It says, composed by Ghost Adder. No, it wasn't Ghost Adder, it was actually Otis McDonald. The tune, actually, at the beginning, for those of you that are interested, not that you probably are, but if you are, it's also used by Technical Guruji and also Content Cop, and probably numerous others. I've actually heard it on Hardware Canucks, they've used it as well. It's a very popular tune. It is on the YouTube kind of creators media library, so you can use it. It is called Otis Mac Music by Otis McDonald.
I've used it.
Even Kath's used it on some of her videos as well. So who else we got with us? I think I'm pretty much up to date on that. Gary's with us, says hi everyone. Captain Meets Adventure says like and share this action-packed episode. He's obviously on the wrong stream. Ricardo's with us, says hi Mike, hi Kath, hi everyone, hoping you're all safe. Yep, I appear to be at the moment. Mark Berry says evening everyone. Joe Panicchio says hi there. Taylor says hello folks. Matthew Bennett says evening Mike and Kath, how you doing Matthew?
Oh, I missed Matthew, sorry.
Jabant1 says hi all. Slim Pickens, what about thermal paste that comes with cheap CPU coolers? Wondering if I should use it or order something better. Now actually that is something that I was considering. When I was going through this process, I didn't have any real idea of what they actually use as the stock thermal compound on AMD processors. I'm actually really interested to know. I'm not sure where it comes from. I'm imagining that because the majority of coolers which come out of AMD's factory are designed by Cooler Master and in the most part actually produced by Cooler Master, just rebadged. I imagine it's Cooler Master's own paste, but I'm not entirely sure what that is, because I know they do a couple of high-end pastes, but I'm not sure what their kind of run-of-the-mill standard stuff is. If anybody knows, let us know in the comments. I'd be interested to hear. Steve D says, hi all. Captain Meats Adventure says, wallpaper paste. I didn't try that. That would have been an interesting one. Junior Thomas says, hi. Joe says, I just bought and tried Arctic Silver 5. Had used Noctua. Quite a difference, both good and different qualities. That is basically what we're going to be going through tonight. If you were to say, what is the best thermal paste, how would you actually validate that? This is a genuine question. I actually do want to have your answers in the comments. It's a really difficult thing to do because most people have got priorities. Now, your priority might be confined to budget. So basically the cost, or cost per gram, or longevity. Quantity as well, I suppose that would come into the same sort of thing. Also as well, obviously you've got things like one of the key things, which is thermal performance. So how many watts can it actually transfer from the CPU into the huge block of metal you have hanging off the side of your cooler. That is also a very kind of valid way of defining which is good and which is bad. Most of these have got a rating based in watts per meters Kelvin. So that's basically how they calculate the transfer. And generally they start out very low at kind of like 1 watts per meter Kelvin. And some of them go right up to kind of 35, 40, even higher in some particular instances. So you'd think, logically thinking about it, that if you had a thermal interface which had a huge rating as far as thermal conductivity would be, you would assume, rightly or wrongly, that that would be the best. Well, you would, wouldn't you? Higher generally equals best, especially if you're looking for transfers. If you put it into another metric, how fast is a car? The fastest car would obviously be the best car, in theory. Yeah, as long as it's got a stripe on it. So that is another metric of measurement. Another metric of measurement is ease of use. How easy is the paste to apply? Which it does actually differ quite a lot between different pastes. Some pastes are very low viscosity, so they're nice and easy to spread around. Some of them are a little bit more gloopy, which require a little bit more care and attention, which also then reflects it also reflects on the kind of the method of application. Now, me personally, generally, I tend to go for a kind of almost like a very small rice-sized bit of paste, and then depending on the viscosity, I'll either allow the CPU cooler to actually spread it out using just pressure from the pad. As you tighten it up, it'll just basically fan out across the CPU. I said printer then, why would I say that? Anyway, another method I quite often employ is if it's a very low viscosity paste, then I'll basically use my finger and I'll basically just smear it around the actual CPU core. I know a lot of people will say, no, you shouldn't do that because you're going to introduce grease from your fingers and all that kind of stuff. And you're right, it probably does, and probably does introduce micro air bubbles and all that kind of stuff. But over many years of testing different applications and methods and amounts of paste, there isn't a huge amount of difference. I've done some testing, albeit not entirely scientific, but generally, depending on the application method, you're likely to be looking at maybe 1 or 2 degrees at a very maximum of difference between an excellent application and a piss poor application. So it's not overly important. And also the ability to actually measure the amount of grease on your fingers that you're transferring into the thermal compound, it's way beyond my levels of ability and most normal people. So these have been done with kind of real world pricing, real world processors, and real world methods. So if it's been easy to do, I've spread it with my finger. If it's been a slightly more viscous one, then I've let it flatten out with the CPU if that wasn't possible. So some of the results, obviously, you may find if you use these compounds yourself, they may differ slightly. Hey, it's bound to. But I've tried to get the test as accurate as possible for kind of everyday normal use. So in the testing, I've also disconnected the internet to prevent random things like Windows updates or background processes happening. I did also close down Steam, which was on the PC, and also the Razer software, which is used for the capture card. So essentially, pretty much everything else was running, so antivirus stuff in the background, general Windows file management, that kind of thing. I didn't bother doing a fresh install for each individual application because realistically, no one does that in the real world. I could have gone in and manually set the frequency for the processor to a specific amount, but again, who realistically in their right mind is going to do that? You're not. Realistically, you're going to either overclock your processor or you're going to at least have precision boost overclocking on to allow the processor to boost if it needs to. And that goes both Intel and AMD. Now, I have done this testing with AMD Ryzen 5 3600 processor, which again, these are kind of mid-range, kind of middle-of-the-road compounds and pastes, and that processor is what some people would consider middle-of-the-road. A lot of people will actually say is high-end because it is a particularly good processor, but it's one of those things which is available, it's hugely popular, and is actually the best-selling processor on Amazon in the UK, the US, and pretty much around the world. So the most popular processor on the planet right now, so that is why I decided to use it. Whilst also when I was doing the testing, so I turned the PC on after applying the paste, let it settle for about 3 minutes after initial boot up, just so that if there's any startup processes still running, they could level out and give me a baseline reading of a idle system after 3 minutes. Also, that allows the water to get circulating in the pump. Now, we were using the Fractal S34, is it S34 or S36? I never remember that one. Is the Fractal 360mm AIO. So by using that, we were kind of technically removing any thermal bottlenecks. There's a lot of fluid in there, obviously, because it's a radiator and it's a big one, so 360. So the real thing which would differentiate between different test runs would be possibly the processor usage, and the other thing is basically the thermal capacity of the radiator, which the 3600 will never really overcome what that radiator can do. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, we were in good standing. So that is the testing methodology. I'll go through some of your other comments in a minute. Junior Thomas, I said that one already. Welly Bob says, evening all. Kath says, thanks, Uggs. Cosmic Space Muffin says, hi all. Kieran Atkinson says, Kath, have you seen those RGB IC lights on Amazon? I got some that give you 10 meters for 28 quid. They're absolutely lovely. It's RGB for the home.
I didn't see that, sorry.
No, we'll have to take a look at that. Jubant1 says, low-powered machines and non-overclockable CPs. I use GD900. For anything else, use Thermal Grizzly.
Gone to sleep.
Oh. Wake up. Thank you. Antonio says, if I get Ryzen 5 3600 and leave it stock, just enable XMP on RAM, should I get Noctua NTH2 thermal paste or stock paste good enough? It depends on the cooler, is essentially what it's going to come down to. You'll get much more difference in performance or temps depending on the actual cooler you're using rather than the paste itself, which we'll see shortly. Jonathan Pearson says, for Pete's sake, just use MX4 and be happy, never had a problem. Now, MX4 is amongst the group here that we tested, and there was a good reason for that, again, because like most people, well, what it says on the side of the box, I did notice this earlier, 97% satisfied customers. So, admittedly, it's a thermal paste, so there's not really a great deal to get upset with other than the price, and if it's not a very good price, then you wouldn't buy it. So getting a 97% approval rating on a product for thermal paste isn't particularly difficult. And surprisingly, well, actually no, I'm not going to give it away. I'll let you guys see what the results were. And I think the internet's gone on my laptop. God damn it. Am I in flight mode? No, I'm not, that's why. Flight mode enabled. Hopefully that'll be better. Am I still buffering? No, I'm good. Okay. Taylor says, doing a new build with a Ryzen 5 3600 on Wednesday. Awesome stuff. Ugly Bob says, I might just do that. I'm toying with an AIO, so I might use it on that. Captain Me's Adventure says, apparently the firm took away all of Megan's thermal paste from her. Ah, dear. David Aikens put £5 super chat and says, can't watch tonight, but cheers for all the help. No worries, mate. You're very, very welcome. Thank you for loaning me your speakers. What do you guys think of the RGB?
You're a bit dark now.
I am a little bit dark. Is it better than the disco ball? That is the question. I'm not entirely sure. But I'll go along with what you guys say, because ultimately this is all for you. Needs more RGB. Yeah, it does. Kieran says, while I'm watching the stream, I might move back into the Cooler Master Cosmos. Actually, for those of you that are looking for a cheap case at the moment, the Cooler Master MB520 8RGB has currently been reduced quite hugely on Hot UK deals. So if you're in the UK, you can get it at the moment from Amazon. They are selling it for just under £49 for the MB520 ARGB. I am tempted. I am tempted. It's Cooler Master, so the fanboys will watch it regardless. Has it dropped enough in price to make it worth under 50 quid? I think it probably has. I might get Kath to order that for me. Ricardo says, yes, I'll miss the disco ball. It might come back. It might make a return. We'll see. Might have to put some more sockets in the wall though. David Aiken says, yes, it looks better. Thank you. Mark Berry says, when I bought my son's 3400G from Scan, there was a free tube of MX4 in the bundle. Awesome. Muckless says, hey people, Mike, the Noctua paste, do you consider high-end? It's really difficult to say what is high-end and what isn't. How do you actually validate if it's high-end? Do you go on price, which would normally indicate a premium product? Do you go on performance? Does that make it high-end? If so, some of the stuff in the high-end shouldn't be, in my opinion. Captain Meets Ventures, is the glitter ball going to be a giveaway? I'm not too sure. Sky Stalker says, I like the new RGB mic. Thank you, Sky. Appreciate that. Right, so let's introduce the pastes. So first of all, I can't remember, which camera do I use? That one, that is the one. So the first paste that we're going to be using, this is basically your cheap, nasty stuff, tried and tested, been using this for years. This is the cheapo, basically you can look it up on Amazon and stuff like that. This is HY710. It comes in a huge syringe and it doesn't actually say how much is included in there. I've gone with the assumption that it's 40 grams, which seems to be the kind of like the ballpark. It could be 42, it could be slightly more, it could be slightly less. But I'm going to say 42. So that is basically a huge, huge pot. And actually, if I can peel some of that back and see how far up the tube it actually goes. I should have done that earlier, actually. But anyway, this oddly retails for in the region. Oh, that's the wrong button. This stuff retails in the region on Amazon.co.uk as of today for, let me just double check my notes, £2.99. So £3 for 42 grams of paste. Now, let's say 40 for argument's sake. So we are looking approximately, I did write this down as well actually, what an idiot I am. So you're looking at about 0.7 pence per gram of thermal compound.
And how many grams do you use?
So depending on how much you use on a regular basis, this could be the answer to your prayers and also save you an absolute fortune. Now, it's not junk. It's not the worst paste in the world. It does work. Again, I've used this stuff for many, many years. This is actually the second one I bought. The first one I bought back in the early 2000s. That one come to an end relatively recently, so I've replaced it with this one. And obviously, if it was complete garbage, I wouldn't buy it again. But it actually does work okay. Again, we'll take some look. I've got some graphs and bar charts and all that kind of malarkey, so we can take a look at later so we can do the comparisons. So that is the first one on our list. So that is the effectively HY710. Now the upgraded version of the HY710 is ironically the HY710. So HY710, as you can possibly see if it ever focuses, Try and focus on that rather than my face. You get the idea. So this stuff is, yeah, basically the same size pot or tube, container, however you want to look at it. So again, about 40 grams. This stuff is a bit more expensive. Now this is normally about £8, give or take, for the 40 gram version. So even still, that gives you roughly a kind of around like 20 to 22 pence per gram. So as far as gram prices go, again, this is very cheap. The downside with this stuff is it's a very silvery one. Now, none of these that I've used in the kind of demonstration or the review, or whatever you want to call it, none of them have actually got electrical conductivity, or at least not enough to cause damage. So obviously, because they are a semi-liquid, potentially there are instances where that would be actually electrically conductive if you had enough voltage or amperage going through it. You could possibly get a current through it. But in a regular kind of 12 volt system, it's unlikely this is going to cause any damage, even though there is a pretty high element of silver in it.
Put your bomb behind.
Sorry, one of the downsides of this particular paste is it's not particularly easy to clean. Now, I've actually, in my methodology, I've listed the various components of what I think would be good points to actually differentiate between pastes. So one is price, two is how to actually apply it, whether it's easy to apply. The next one is its overall value, so based on price, quantity, etc., reusability. The next one is actually the cleanup. How easy is it actually to clean the stuff away after? For some people, obviously, they probably don't care less about the cleanup because they're going to apply it and forget it, it's job done. But for a lot of people out there, especially those who like to tinker around a little bit and swap stuff over, the actual cleanup process is a real pain in the arse. So the cleanup is part and parcel of my particular ratings. Smarka?
Start for me, it's bad.
Oh, he very is. Skystruck says, "Oh, how nasty is that paste, Mike?" It's not awful. We'll see from the results shortly how awful it is. So that is the second one on the list. Which shall I go for next? So next one on the list was this is, well, it's kind of empty now because I've used it all. This was the Bequiet DC1 compound. Now this is what you'd normally get included with most Bequiet coolers, so Dark Rock Pro, the AIOs, that kind of stuff. The DC1 is a slightly more premium priced version of thermal paste. So normally you'd buy this in a 3 gram size container, and for that you'd be paying about £8.70 at the moment, around about £8 to £9. So that gives us what was it, roughly about £2.90 a gram. So massively more expensive than the cheapo ones. So you'd expect, in theory, this to be considerably better. But was it? We will see. That one also, again, is a little bit more gloopy than the cheaper ones. Still not electrically conductive, so that's fine. But yeah, that is kind of what I would consider a semi-mid-range one. Now actually, thermal conductivity. So thermal conductivity, the first one, the cheapo one, you're looking about 1.93 watts per meter Kelvin. So relatively low, 1.3, or say 2 for argument's sake. Then you've got the HY710. That comes in at just over 3.17 watts per meter Kelvin. So again, very small difference, not a great deal of difference at all. Then we go to the Bequiet one. Now that jumps up quite a bit, over double, 7.5 watts per meter Kelvin. So that is actually quite an impressive jump. Next one up from that is going to be again the tiny one. So this is the Gelid GC PRO, not the Extreme, the Pro version. This is what you'd normally get included with most of Gelid's coolers, especially things like the Phantom. What was it, the Phantom Black? Yeah, Phantom Black, that sort of thing. This one, very similar to the Bequiet, which is why I kind of paired those together. So this one has got a thermal capacity of about 7 watts per meter Kelvin. And price-wise, actually not too bad a price. You're looking at about £6 for 5 grams of that one, which gives you around about £1.20 per gram. So actually, price-wise, the Gelid one is not too bad as far as a slightly more premium compound is concerned. Next up is a little bit of a curveball. This is the IC Innovation Cooling, or IC Graphite Thermal Pad. So for those of you who haven't seen these before, these are basically thermal pads which you can use instead of paste. These are obviously, because they are just a graphite pad, which let's get a close-up on that one. So you can see it's basically a almost like a sheet of metal, but very, very thin and a little bit flexible. So you can see that, and this comes in 40 by 40 mil square. Nice and easy to apply. As you can see, this one's been used quite a few times. This actually has a thermal rating of 35 watts per meter Kelvin. This is actually the highest of the ones that we've tested. Now, obviously, this is going to rate really highly on some of my testing kind of metrics for a few reasons. The thermal conductivity, technically, is extremely high. I'm still on the wrong camera. The thermal conductivity is seemingly exceptionally high. The installation method is fantastic. It's an extremely clean setup because there's no paste. So literally you just put it on top of the CPU. The one thing that I did mark it down on, which you may or may not agree with me, I'm not entirely sure how you feel about it. Some of the flexibility of using a thermal compound is the fact that if you've got your PC, much like I've got mine behind me, which is what I've been testing on today, in the upright position, this is an absolute pain in the ass to install because there's no adhesion to it whatsoever. So you put it on the CPU and it just falls straight off. So you do have to have good access to the CPU in a flat space, which isn't always possible. I totally understand that. I have marked it accordingly. I've put this down as being potentially one of the highest rating on actual installation because obviously it is so simple. You literally just put it on, bolt down your cooler, you're done. Also as well, it's measured very, very well in obviously the cleanup stakes, because as soon as you take the CPU cooler off, this thing comes off, there's no paste to remove, literally that is it. So in terms of installation and ease of use, thermal conductivity, this rates extremely highly, and in theory, due to the specs, it should win overall because obviously you're not paying per gram because it's basically about £8, £9 for the sheet, which in theory you could use indefinitely. All you'd need to do if it does get dirty, use something like, you can use brake cleaner because that's got quite high alcohol levels in it, or you can use isopropyl alcohol just to rinse it off in that. That technically, as long as you don't damage it, could last you your lifetime. So again, it scores really, really highly on the value proposition because it's a one-time purchase and it's not a finite resource like obviously thermal paste. The more you use it, eventually it's going to run out. This is going to maintain pretty much its original cooling efficiency from day one to the day you snuff it or lose it or give it away. So this is basically the death knell to some pastes because it's a one-time purchase, which is a bit of a nose for some people. But anyway, which is bizarre because I bought 3 of them, as you do. So I'm going to take a quick slurp of my tea and have a look at some of the comments and see what you guys are thinking so far. What have I got to look at, Kath?
Captain Meat.
Captain Meats, what's he said? When you have applied the thermal pad, you can go roller skating, walking the dog, skydiving. Oh dear. I get the reference. Ugly Bob says, Skystalker, if we get graphs, I'm going to do another super chat. There are graphs coming. Arctic Silver 5, I love it. Shame it's too small. Arctic Silver was going to be as part of this whole setup, but unfortunately I used all of it. So I went to use the tube and it's like, oh, damn it, it's empty. So yeah, sorry about that. Ugly Bob says, Yeppo, we will turn Mike into Gamers Nexus. Oh dear. English Technical Jesus. You guys in the chat. Oh dear. Thermal pad for you. Arctic paste is fab, that's why Mike has used it all. Yeah, it is actually, yeah. Arctic Silver is I always got confused with Arctic Silver and Arctic Cooling, because you'd assume that they're from the same company, but it isn't. It's completely different. Irie Wolfman says MX4 versus MX5. I'm waiting for MX5 to come out for us over here. It seems to be really limited stock. Also, they've kind of... I'm not too sure what Arctic have done, because there's MX4, but there's MX4 New, which appears to be a new compound. But I'm thinking that's the same stuff as they're marketing as MX5 elsewhere. I could be completely wrong. And there's also MX2, which the difference between MX2 and MX4, I just cannot work out at all for the life of me. Matthew Day says, has Kath got a clicky switch keyboard? No, she hasn't.
I'm lucky if I've got any letters on the
Right, moving on. So that is the, we're up to the thermal pads. Up to our Ryzen thermal pads we are. What is next? So next is obviously MX4. Good old favourite. Everybody loves a bit of MX4. It is, thermal conductivity wise, it doesn't actually rate as high as the pads, bizarrely, which you'd think it would, but I think where is it? Referring to my notes, MX4 is 8.5 watts per meter Kelvin. So it's higher than the Bequiet and GC Pro by basically about 1.5 degrees, 1 degree. This actually as well does come out particularly well in the bargains situation. So this is a 20 gram one. I did take my pricing from a 4 gram one, but it didn't actually work out much difference. So the 4 gram one, you're looking at the moment around about £6 on Amazon.co.uk. So that gives you roughly around about £1.50. Depending where you get it from, there's a couple of different prices. So we worked out around about £1.50, £1.53 per gram. So £1.53 per gram isn't bad. And if you go for the slightly larger containers, you do seem to get quite a considerable discount. So if you're using a lot of it, then it does make sense to buy a slightly larger container. Again, that is down to the individual, whether or not that works out for you or not. It doesn't appear to have a lifespan. Although the one thing I did notice about MX4, and the MX2 for that matter, that I've had when you get a CPU cooler from Arctic, there does appear to be some level of separation of the actual product in the tube. Now let me know in the comments if you've had this as well. So when you inject it, when you syringe it, normally most pastes are very consistent, whereas I very often find with thermal paste from Arctic that there's almost like a kind of oily sub kind of fluid in there. It's almost like the thermal compound is in a suspension, and it's almost like it needs shaking or mixing. For me, it's fine because obviously I put a blob on there, smooth it around my finger, because this, as far as application goes for pastes, I think MX4 is probably one of the easiest to do. It's got a relatively low viscosity, which does mean it lends well to being spread out. So if you don't want to use the compression method on your CPU, then just smooth it around with your finger. If you then stop and then let it settle, it will get to like a sheen on the top. So it starts off like almost like a matte finish. Very quickly it will turn to a sheen, which means that the top surface is kind of solidifying, much like I'm trying to think what is a good example. Maybe like a glass of cola. So you pour a glass of cola into your cup, it fizzes up, so that's kind of you spreading the paste around. And after a while, if you leave it, the bubbles will eventually pop all together and you'll be left with a smooth, flat surface. Sorry, Arctic, but yeah, you have got the Coca-Cola analogy. But essentially, that is how it works. It does level out, almost like self-leveling compound if you've ever done flooring, that kind of stuff. So yeah, pretty good stuff. Price-wise, it's priced in and around kind of other semi-premium compounds like the DC1, the GC Pro, etc. Wattage we've said, yeah, easy to use, etc. Quite easy to clean up as well. And yeah, did quite well in the testing, so we'll leave that. The next one is one which I was actually sent for a review from the people over at IONZ. Now, some of you that watch the channel have seen it before. I've done the IONZ cases. So this comes through and actually got a nice little packet, and it actually comes with the application spreader. So if you don't fancy getting your digits all over the paste, then you can use that instead. This is rated at 13.4 watts per meter Kelvin. So again, another big jump from the MX4 compound. So in theory, you'd think, based on that, based on the meters, the watts per meter Kelvin, this should be bloody good. And that should be amazing because it's 35 watts. Now, it doesn't always work out that way because the actual compound itself is measured with a resistance to temperature. It doesn't take into account things like the actual width or thickness. So because that pad is actually quite thick and paste is actually quite thin when it gets compressed, that then kind of equals them out. Anyway, we'll take a look at that. So 13.4 watts per meter Kelvin, price-wise, not great. 2 grams for £6, give or take. So you're looking at about £3 per gram. So that's actually one of the higher ones. Relatively easy to apply, slightly gloopy, not quite as viscous or lacking viscosity as the MX4, and very similar to the GC Pro and also the DC1 from Bequiet. So let's take us through the some of the graphs.
Ugly Bob's gonna get
these. To be fair, let's not get carried away. These graphs are essentially shit. They're not animated, and I'm no expert with Excel whatsoever. And I did it in a hurry, and
you don't know what you're doing.
And I don't know what I'm doing, basically. Is that enough excuses, do you think? It probably is. So I've saved them as JPEGs because I basically can't be arsed. So there we go. There is your thermal rating, watts per meter, as we've said already. And obviously watts per meter Kelvin, higher, technically, is better. That's the theory. Sorry, I've got to put it back on because Bob's dropped a super chat on us. £2 and he says, graphs. There are graphs. They are rubbish. I wasn't supposed to be doing this stream tonight. I was supposed to be doing something completely different. But because of the way the day's gone, this is basically how it's ended up. I'm a bit concerned about this light. It's kind of like lighting up my my man boobs. I'll have to exercise and jiggle them. Oh dear. Anyway, moving on. So, in theory then, you'd think that the icy thermal pad here with 36 watts per meter Kelvin should be the standout leader. And conversely, you'd expect something like the HCIB, which is basically the HY710, to be basically awful. But will it Holly Willoughby, will it actually be awful? Let's find out.
It's better meat.
So, I don't want to see that. Go away, shut it. So this is your thermal paste cost per gram. And as you can see, the Bequiet DC1 and the IONZ P14 pretty much tied up there at just under the £3 mark. So those are the most expensive ones. Lower on this particular graph is better. The lowest cost there, obviously, as you can see, is the icy thermal pad. I had to put it in as a penny because effectively it is a indefinite supply. It'll just keep on going and going and going and going unless you lose it or damage it. It does get actually quite close to the HY710, which is roughly about 7p per gram, which is basically nothing. I'm not too sure what the next slide is, so this could be interesting. Right, okay. So this is ease of use, which is given by the kind of the blue and the grey bars. You've got the value, which is kind of like the cost value, which I've rated. Basically, each one of these ratings is out of 5. There's 4 particular ones, so potentially you could score up to a whopping 20 whole points. Bristolian Nexus. Oh, you bastards. So, as you can tell, so application-wise, all of them roughly are the same. So I'll give them 4 to each one. I was going to give the icy thermal pad a 5, but because of the fact that it has to be done on a flat surface, that has gone against it. The other thing, Arctic MX4, I was umming and ahhing. I would have liked to have given it a 5, but it's not entirely easy because it does have that element of separation to the compound. All the others are basically the same. So the HY510, very easy to use and smooth. HY710 against the 510, again, similar sort of deal. It has actually gone against it though in the removal process. So yeah, essentially they've all scored pretty much the same in terms of application. So they're all relatively straightforward with a few gotchas here and there. Value-wise, obviously, the ones that have done really well are things that are cheap. So obviously, HY510 done well, 5 points, 5 points for the 710, and also 5 points for the thermal pad. I couldn't not give it that really. I should have gone for 4.5s for the HY510 because I suppose in terms of actual investment and money back on your investment, the icy thermal pad probably is the overall winner, but they have their pros and cons. So yeah, that lasts forever. That is just basically cheap and will probably last you almost forever. Next up is the clean-in. So the clean-up one for me is relatively important. The first one, HY510, is a silicon-based kind of polymer, so it wipes off extremely easily. The silver-based HY710 is actually a bit of a bastard. Because it's got those really, really tiny silver nanoparticles, they get everywhere. So if you get it on your skin, on your clothes, or anything, even on your motherboard, it's an absolute bastard to get off.
Do it like Lady Gaga.
So that scored particularly low for actual cleanup. Bequiet DC1, absolutely fine, a little bit clumpy, but still removed relatively easily with just a paper towel and some alcohol, as all of them have been. GC Pro, again, same deal. Thermal pad I've given a 5 because obviously you take it off and it's completely clean, ready to go. So that has scored particularly well there. Arctic MX4, it does take a towel and a little bit to remove it. Again, it's relatively easy to get rid of. So again, it's scored a 4, pretty much the same as all the pastes. IONZ P14, again, same deal. The value for money proposition on the P14 is going against it at the moment, as is the Bequiet DC1. All the others have done pretty well, but value-wise, the IONZ has done not particularly well there. So when it comes to performance, this is where things get more interesting, and the graph kind of does replicate the wattage per meters Kelvin graph from earlier on. So if we quickly slip back to that one. So if we look at the kind of the graph there, it swoops down, that goes up crazy, then it goes up towards the end. So if we look at the actual performance one, we've got a similar sort of line, although the thermal pad doesn't go up as high as you'd expect it to, based on the watts per meter Kelvin. Down to the reason of, obviously, like we said before, it is down to how thick the actual piece of carbon is. It is relatively thick, and it's certainly thicker than a very thin smear of compound. So some of that does actually mean it does resist more of the temperature. If it was thinner, then it would obviously do better. But surprisingly, this was surprising, the IONZ P14 actually did slightly better in overall performance than the MX4, and also the Bequiet DC1, which I wasn't expecting. So let's move on to the next slide. So here we are, this is the kind of like the overall score. So if you're based on purely on everything, what is the best thing to use? Yeah, if you're going on everything, combining everything, so ease of use, convenience, longevity, and all that kind of stuff, the icy thermal pad actually does win overall over MX4, IONZ P14, and all those other pastes. Now it is relatively close, there is only 1 point between them, so it is actually a very close tie, and that is really comes down to the performance measure. So let's take a look at the highest and lowest recorded temp. So this is the Ryzen 5 3600 with precision boost overclocking, with a very slight kind of overclock as well. Water cooled, as we said, on the Fractal S36 360mm AIO. So you've got your low temperatures in blue and high temperatures in orange, which hopefully kind of makes sense. Blue is cold, orange is warm. See what I did there? That was creative, that was, trust me. So lowest recorded temperatures across the board is around about 30 degrees. Some of the better compounds actually got down a little bit lower, down to 28 degrees. So the Arctic MX4 and the IONZ P14 both tied at 28 degrees is the lowest temperature. This is in a 22-degree ambient room, so 6 degrees over ambient. The temperature maintained pretty much straight through, so also not bad at all. The IONZ one, I was tempted to let the IONZ run a little bit longer to see if it would actually drop down. I did leave it for 3 minutes before we started, and then a further 5 minutes after the benchmarking, just to see how it would level out. Normally with a water cooling system, it should level out within 5 minutes. An air cooler would normally level out after about a minute or so. But because of the thermal mass, I thought it would do this.
You wear white pants with it?
Yeah, I think so. So using thermal paste allows you to wear white pants too. Oh yes, it certainly does. So as you can tell, high temperatures, highest recorded temperature, no surprises there. The HY710, followed very closely by the HY710, so only 2 degrees between that, so 66 degrees versus 64 degrees. Then we took a bit of a drop using the more premium pastes, as you'd expect, because they do cost a little bit more. So we've got a slight drop in temperature there for the Bequiet DC1, thanks to 29 degrees. Again, potentially it could be within margin of error, it is only 1 degree, but there is a noticeable drop there from 64 down to 61. So that is definitely an improvement. The Gelid GC PRO, only 1 degree hotter, but I waited a little bit longer just to see if it dipped down to 29 and didn't. So even though it is only 1 degree, it is a difference, so I had to include it. Highest temperatures again, 61 degrees, so yeah, totally fine. The icy thermal pad, surprisingly, done particularly well at the low temperatures. So 29 degrees, so beating out most of the competition and getting quite close to the Arctic and the IONZ.
How often should you change thermal paste?
Thermal paste you should change probably, I don't know, every 6 months or a year, something like that. Or whenever you change a processor or cooler. The icy thermal pad, you can see there, not quite as bad as the two of the cheaper compounds, but 63 degrees is still a couple of degrees higher. Again, it's not a huge amount. The real differences in this are shown at the very end with the benchmarks. So this stuff is kind of like you can take it or leave it, but the real performance metrics are at the very end. So yeah, Arctic MX4, 28 degrees, great result, 61 degrees on the top, so equaled the Bequiet and the Gelid on the top end, but slightly lower on the lower end. IONZ P14, very surprisingly, technically you'd expect it to because of the pricing metrics there, but yeah, to actually be on par with the IONZ P14 and the MX4 rather, that surprised me. I didn't think it was going to be that good. So let's move on to the last one. So this is the Cinebench R23. So we did 5 runs on each setup and took the average of those 5 runs. So as you can see, a very similar graph to what we saw with the wattage per meters Kelvin. So obviously the Cinebench scores, that is a very kind of what's the word, custom or synthetic load, but it does give you something which is repeatable. So as you can see, we've got 8,945 for the HC510, we've got just under 9,000 with the HY710, so a reasonable improvement, so a good 50 points higher, which kind of is within the margin of error, but I did rerun it numerous times just to make sure that it wasn't error and it did equal out as being that. Moving up a little bit higher, we've got the Bequiet DC1, which done actually a little bit better again, so get another 70 points on top of that. The Gelid GC PRO didn't do quite as well. I did rerun that test, like I said, on the others just to make sure, so these are averages, so any anomalies should have been evened out. Icy thermal pad, done pretty good, considering, not bad at all. I think with that, the actual thermal advantage of the 35 watts per meter Kelvin actually does help out in that particular instance, because it's transferring the heat across quite quickly and allowing the processor to boost a little bit higher. Now, boost clocks on these, we did start off all core boost on the lowest end on the HY510, round about 3900, so 3.9 gigahertz. As we moved up to the HY710, we then got up to just shy of the 3950, across all 6 cores. And as we moved up, we're getting towards the 4000s on all 4 cores. When we got to the IONZ one, surprisingly at the very end, we were seeing the actual boost clocks slightly lower, but they were certainly a lot more consistent. So that is, yeah, it's an unusual one. I wasn't sure why the IONZ done so well. Again, I did run the test repeatedly. It's only about 30 points difference overall over the averages, but it did seem that the temperatures were more stable, which seemed pretty good. Welly Bob says, we need a t-shirt with these graphs on. Not a bad idea. So essentially that is the key takeaway. The Arctic MX4 and the IONZ P14 both have done exceptionally well in terms of raw performance. For longevity, ideally, it's the IC thermal pad is really going to be the ultimate winner because it's just basically going to last forever. The scores aren't stellar, but certainly when you take into consideration Gelid GC PRO, Bequiet DC1, HY710, those 3 are all costing roughly, give or take £1, the same as the IC thermal pad, but these have got much, well, those 2 particularly, is a very small amount of compound, like 2 or 3 grams. That is a lot bigger, like 40 grams, so that's going to last forever. But performance-wise, there is actually quite a big jump between the top and the bottom. So if you look at the very bottom, you're looking at 8,950, give or take, and you're looking at 9,150 for argument's sake, if you round up slightly. So that is actually like 200 points different. No, sorry. Yeah, that is, isn't it? 200 points. Yeah, confusing myself. So 200 points, if you've got an extra 200 points in your Cinebench run, just by tweaking your system, you'd be pretty pleased, I think, most people. Now, obviously, Cinebench is not really the kind of the bona fide thing of, yes, my processor is better than yours, or my cooling stuff is better than yours. I purely used it as a metric to level the playing field. Now, realistically, most of these numbers mean absolutely sod all, and a lot of you will probably just go for something which is easy to install, or easy to clean up, or costs very little. But all I was trying to do is, basically, IONZ sent me the P14 paste. It looked to be pretty decent on paper, and as it turns out, it did do pretty bloody well. So, yeah, if you're looking for any compounds, I would say any of these 3, the IONZ P14, the Arctic MX4, or IC thermal pad, all 3 of those are a very good shout, depending on what your needs are and your budget, obviously. Those 4 at the other end, the Bequiet DC1, the Gelid GC PRO, certainly usable. There's nothing inherently wrong with them, just I personally think that the other 3 offer a little bit more for your money. And the 2 at the bottom, again, nothing actually wrong with them as such. They do the job, and they're not a huge amount of difference, especially when it looks at the actual thermal results. So it's that one there, isn't it? So looking at the performance metrics in temperature-wise, the difference between the hottest and the coolest is like 5 degrees, which isn't a great deal. Now, obviously, if you're using a much faster processor, a much hotter processor, then yes, that could change. If you're using a lot lesser wattage processor, maybe using an APU, then yeah, the difference is probably going to be even less. But if you're looking to squeeze out as much possible power from your CPU and get performance out of it as well, then it does seem that using one of these 3 in this top end here are certainly worthwhile doing. So that is it. That is the results of it. I wasn't expecting the P14 paste to do as well as it did, if I'm completely honest with you. IONZ are not known for being kind of mid or high end stuff. Generally, a lot of their stuff, their cases, are kind of aimed at the entry level. So I assumed that the paste would be pretty much the same, just a generic paste in a pretty wrapper. But the actual 13.5 watts per Kelvin metric that they list on there does appear to be accurate. So yeah, well done to IONZ. I don't know where you got it from or who the OEM is of the paste. Clearly it's not IONZ because they don't make paste. But yeah, done a pretty good job. So let's take a look at some of your questions in the... Actually, I'm going to have a slurp of my drink a moment. Dave Bell says, 2% difference, I'll take the 510 any day. The HY710, again, like I said, I've bought and used this stuff for donkeys. And it does work really well. And actually, because it is a slightly more kind of silicon type base, it's really good when you've got slight gaps as well. So if you're using it on perhaps a GPU, where you've got bare die against the heatsink, and you may have some imperfections or whatever, actually for GPUs, this stuff's really good because it maintains a little bit of a thickness to it. With the MX4, because it is a very light and very easy to move around, you do find on some graphics cards, depending on the spacing, or whether it's... I'm trying to think which card I had it on. I did put it on one graphics card and the temperatures got noticeably worse because there did seem to be an obvious gap between contact points. So basically changing the paste for something a little thicker works much better. So yeah, the extra thickness of the kind of silicon base of that HY710 is actually pretty decent. Aussie Boy says, weather warming up in the UK soon. I certainly hope so. Trojan says, I've been using MX4 for years. Good value paste, that. I got no complaints with it. I really haven't. I really do. Actually, I'm wondering now if I can actually get some of this out and show you the actual viscosity where it separates. I might not be able to do it now. Ow, that hurt. What can I put it on which would actually show it? Could do with a mirror. A mirror, as they say.
I've got a mirror.
Have you got a mirror?
I've got a mirror somewhere.
Let's see if we can get this. 65 Fahrenheit in Chicago today.
I don't know how clean it is because it's buried under my desk somewhere.
Calf's looking for a mirror. Jay James says, Mike, can you pop round and fit my Arctic Freezer 240? My stepson has let me down, lol. Oh. Sorry. Wish I could.
I've got glass.
Glass? Glass might do. Yeah, actually glass will probably do. Let's have a bit of glass.
Needs clean. Stop the lid.
Aussie Boy says, GPUs are so expensive at the moment. I know. I deliberately tried to avoid the GPUs. Right, got to try not to get this in my eye. Did that before. It's actually a brake cleaner for cars and bikes, but actually works very well as a general all-round cleaning thing, and it evaporates as well, so it's really good. And it's actually got mint smell to it, which is awesome. I don't know how I'm going to be able to focus in on this. I don't know if this is even going to work. I think it is. I don't think it's separated enough. Although there is, yeah, you can just about see it. So there is... I was trying to think of a really horrible analogy then to explain what this actually looks like. But it was so horrible, even I decided not to. I laughed, I lolled, and better move your arms then. Right, I don't know if that's actually going to... Look at that, looks like a turd or something. There we go. So that is kind of focusing. So you can see it's got that kind of shiny, like an oily kind of, there you go. You can just about see it on that angle where it's got like a watery kind of residue. You see it quite well on that angle. So where it's actually touching the glass, you can see it. But it's like an oil that's surrounded it. That does look disgusting. I do apologise. There's like a little, it's like a little grey turd going on. But yeah, you can see the, you can see where it actually, it's got a kind of gloss around it. ClickTech Kev says, I saw a puppy turd this week. It looked exactly like that. Oh dear. Right, so let me see if I can, I'm going to try and smear that around a bit. So I want to try and get the oil out of it. Maybe it's just towards the end of it. It does seem to be getting better the more I use, but because it's so bloody expensive, you don't really want to use much to get rid of any residue. And actually, the clean finger test, not too bad. Not too bad at all. Sky Stalkers give us 20 Canadian dollars. Said great graphs, Mike, and a great review. Not a huge fan of silicon pads. Find them too fiddly. They are the carbon and the silicon pads. I did have. Oh dear, excuse me. Burping and belching on a live stream. The Trojan says I'm going to give that IONZ a go. Worth doing. Honestly, I would give it a try. Where is I looking? Terminator jizz. I did. Oh, heck.
Angel's in.
Hello, Angel. Where did that go? Oh, there's no way I'm reaching that. Not at my age. Oh my god. Beep, 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 beep. Got my reversing lights on, wide load coming past. So I did have this as well. This is Gelid's GPUL Ultimate Cutting Edge Thermal Pad. Now I was tempted to try this, but I don't think it's really suitable. What's this? They did actually test it on the Phantom Black CPU cooler with 130 watt heat load. But I don't know. That does make me a little bit worried. Essentially, it is basically the same deal. It just compresses out. I might do that one day. I might try that and see what it actually turns out like. But it does kind of worry me. It's basically like a putty. I'm not overly keen on that. Matthew Day says, wish me luck. I have a GT640 and an R9 290X to repaste. Not sure if I'll do the HD 7870 as it looks like you have to take the whole frame apart. Oh dear, yeah. Gary says, did George get his monitor? Yes, he did, yeah. He's had the monitor for ages, but I basically didn't really want to do the editing on that video because I hated the review. I watched it back and stuff, and it's like I don't like the review I did. That is often a side effect of when you do reviews, because you watch them back after you've edited them. You think you've covered everything, then you realise that you haven't. And the monitor was a weird thing because it was very expensive, and to be honest with you, I didn't think a great deal of it. It was good in the fact that it was what George wanted. So yeah, like it is with most presents, if somebody asks for something, then you do what you can to actually get that gift. But yeah, I personally, I wouldn't have got it. If it was for me personally, I wouldn't have bought it. And it did have a few quirks, although I did work out to take the stand off in the end, which in the video I think I said the stand doesn't come off, but it does. And there's Maisie. She's somewhat out of focus, but she is there. Tristan G says, I have Arctic MX4 paste. I like for my builds. I've used others. Ceramic works well also. Outlaw Fett says, I'm back. Gary says, Calf was surprised Mike spent the money. I have a 32-inch. It's a great monitor. The picture quality is phenomenal. Just looking at it, I'm getting more and more into curved monitors, and it does look really, really nice. Wildlife Snapper says, I took delivery of a new AOC 32-inch monitor today. Very nice bit of kit, in fairness, and only £319. Yeah, that's oh, actually, Cap's got it now. My old AOC 32-inch, what was it, the 3279W, I think it was. Nice. Kitty time. Okay. So, let's make a list. I'll make a list. I've got it. Oh, shite. Getting thermal paste over myself. I need a pen. Can I have a Mike's Unboxing pen, please?
Where can you get one?
Where can I get one of these fantastic Mike's Unboxing pens? Well, strangely enough, I know just the place. So, fire out some names of thermal paste in the chat, because I need to try some other thermal paste. I kind of got the bug for it a little bit now. We'll see if there's going to be anything which is going to be outstandingly good value for money. So, I'm waiting. Poised. Thermal Grizzly. Okay. So, Thermal Grizzly. What's that? Paste or pads? Or both? Outlaw Fett says, I love my pen. We have actually got some new merch coming soon. We've got some new screwdrivers coming. Little basic ones. Basically, it's to match these. So it's kind of like a pocket screwdriver. It's got 6 magnetic heads, which are interchangeable. Yeah, they'll be coming soon. The Trojan says GD400. So GD400. Where's that from? AliExpress. Yeah, AliExpress. So we'll try that. Cooler Master paste, yeah, that's a good one. That's worth trying. So we'll definitely go with that. Arctic MX4 paste, yeah, got that. I was going to do MX2, but I don't know. Thermal Detonator, says Captain Meets Adventures. I don't know. I don't think a thermal detonator would do much good on a CPU cooler.
Coconut oil. Coconut
oil, there's a good one. Oh, Noctua NTH2.
You wouldn't have said that if you'd known.
I did. I knew it was you. Cooler Master Gel, that's the one. It's Cooler Master Gel.
Noctua.
Thermal Nan Boots. John Sullivan says, I tried Grizzly, I didn't get on with it. Not a fan of using a spatula. Yeah, I'm not really. If a paste needs a spatula to spread it, it's never really a great sign. It does actually fill me with dread quite often when I see a spatula. Yeah, it's more of an ice cream one, isn't it? For those mini ice creams. Arctic Ceramic. It's okay, Arctic Ceramic. Arctic Ceramic. Okay, got that. Who else we got? So Iron Brew. We could try that. Diamonds, they're quite thermally conductive. A little bit expensive. Thermal Take TG7. TG7 Thermal Take. I don't think actually. I've just done a review for the Thermal Take, their new Divider 300 TG ARGB case. Possibly after the review comes out, they might not want to send me anything else. Mayonnaise, Colgate, Amazon Basic Paste. I wonder if they do that. That would be good.
My mum's thermal paste.
Welly Bob says GD900. So that's another one. So we got GD400. So sorry, GD900. I expect that's AliExpress as well. Blue Tack.
That goes so soggy when it's hot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I bet that goes really sticky and horrible. Corsair. Oh yeah, Corsair do something, don't they? Dorianti, Bequiet DC1. I got the DC1. That was the, well, yeah, that was the kind of the empty one, which we have used that. Wasn't too bad, the DC1. If it's cheaper, I think it'd do really well. Matthew Day says HY883. So HY883. That's definitely worth doing. Be interested to see how well that does actually. That might go into, I might have like a budget thermal paste showdown and go with some of these kind of off-brand stuff. Maybe chucking the GD stuff in as well.
Intimate loop?
I'm not saying that. Patrick, no, just no. Oh, Scythe, yeah, Thermal Elixir, Elixir 2. Elixir 2, okay, that's good, good stuff. Matthew Day says HY883 is 6.5 watts rated. That's pretty good. DS says, hello Mike and good evening from Serbia. I wish you a good evening. Smiley face. I wasn't here a whole time. What do you recommend? Is MX4 good? Yeah, MX4 is very good. It's good value for money. It's overall it scored really well. It was only just slightly beaten by the IONZ P14 paste, but where there were swings and roundabouts, kind of one offsets the other. So MX4 is a little bit easier to apply than the IONZ paste, but the IONZ for some reason did score better in the performance test. So yeah, between the two, ultimately, if you're thinking of getting paste, Arctic MX4 is basically everywhere on the planet. I don't think there's a country that doesn't sell it. So if you can get it, and it's at a reasonable price, get it. And when it's on offer, definitely snap it up. The one I bought there was essentially kind of almost half price when I bought it. So I got like 20 grams for the price of 8. So yeah, it was an absolute no-brainer to get it. And now I've got plenty of compound to work through. Captain Me's Adventure says Anusol. I'm not going to try that. Oh, a Casa 455. That's an interesting one, because Akasa used to do some, do a lot of CPU coolers, but they don't really see many around these days. 455, so definitely we'll add that one on there. Matthew Bennett says Natch and a tomato. Use a tomato and Natch, put it in the blend jet and see what comes out. That's not a bad idea. Ugly Bob, Thermal Right TF8. Thermal Right TF8. This is good, this is good, keep them coming. Wildlife Snapper says Cool Laboratory Liquid Ultra is another to try. Is that a troll, or is that a real thing? It sounds a bit weird. Tristan G says I've used this Corsair XTM50 high performance thermal compound with no problems. I think I actually used that on there. I think that's what comes as standard with the A500. It is. Okay, I'll put that down as well then. Matthew Day says, is there an MX5? I think there is an MX5. Preparation age. Pound shop stuff, yeah. That bit. Sorfiga. At least it would smell nice and orangey.
Bit gritty.
Yeah, I'll have to get the stuff without poly chips. Glenn says, when I tested the HY883, it was up there with my KPX and Gelid XT. That sounds good. Okay, so what was the other one? XTM50. This is going to turn out to be a horrendous day's testing, isn't it? Or probably more than a day. What was the other one? Saint Labs? Cool Lab. Cool Lab Liquid Ultra. Liquid Ultra. Okay. Got another super chat. That has come in from Ricardo. And he sent us 20,000 COPs. And he said, I said Thermaltake TG7. There you have it. This is my contribution to you to buy it. Okay, TG7. Did I write that down? Yes, I did. TG7. Thank you, Ricardo. And what do you think of the new light? I'm quite pleased with it. I think it's quite nice. And I didn't like the light hanging off the side of there. I do really need to take everything off this wall and repaint it, or re-paper it, or something. Should I change it? Should I change the background? That is the question. It is coming to that time of year where the weather's getting nicer. Do I redo the brick with just new brick, fresher brick?
Or even white wood.
Or do we go with like maybe white wooden slats, or I don't know. I don't know what to do. I really don't. Confused. James Miscellaneous says, I'm glad everyone's enjoying this, but I've realised long ago thermal paste doesn't matter too much. Poor Mike, gonna test all this stuff. I know. It is sad. It is very sad. Anthony Carter says, I used the Akasa 455. It's good. Excellent. Mike's repainting. Mike's repainting reviews and hanging paper. Konig Thermal Paste Silver. Konig Silver. Stuart Cleary's got a tenner in and says, cheers. Who chose the brick paper? I think I did. Did you choose it or did I?
I chose it. I think I wanted white paper with bricks, and you actually chose it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Kath wanted white paper with bricks. I chose the paper.
But we've only got 2 walls done because that's all.
Yeah, there's only 2 walls actually. If I turn the camera around, well, you can probably see actually. If I turn the other one on.
Wait, let me come out of the room.
Is it?
That's right. Wait.
So Kath's moving now. So if we look around, let's see. So that is the side you sometimes see. So there is my my wall-mounted monitor. There's the shelf, the unboxing reviews and how-to shelf. My laptop. It's me. Oh yeah. So the wallpaper kind of starts over in that corner. You can see there's a gap there where we didn't bother because it wasn't being seen. So look around there. Oh, the bloody lights have gone out again. There we go. Come back on there. So it goes round and wallpapered all that because the idea was originally to have it kind of aimed over this way. So we'd be filming this way and a bit further back so the shelves would be in it, but it never works out. It's got my lamp there and a load of projectors and stuff. And there's the wall which hasn't been done. And there's Kath's desk. And there's the camera. And there's my cup of tea. So there you go. You can see the other side of it. That's where Kath sits over there.
Flames on the floor, I know.
And flames on the floor, looking after stuff. So yeah, we basically decorated this side. So when you see this and it looks like semi kind of, well, almost semi-professional, this is only 2 corners. You can tell I worked in TV. It's like, yeah, the camera's only looking that way, forget everything else, it's absolutely fine. So we did. My Little Pony wallpaper. Arctic Silver 5. Oh, actually, yeah, I didn't put it on there, did I? I do need to get that anyway. Arctic Silver 5. Oh yeah, salmon. Oh, excuse me. Salmon. I had an Indian earlier. It's killing me. It really is. Glenn says, to be fair, if a good paste is 4 to 5 degrees C better, it can be the difference between 100 and 200 megahertz sustained boost free difference. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That is essentially why I think the IONZ P14 did quite well. It was the sustained boost was really good. Kind of, it was 4,000, maybe as much as 4,050, 4,075. And it basically held on to that for quite a long time, which was really good. James Miscellaneous says, I heard if you slap on a Mugen, whatever you call it, 5 on the top, it improves the performance of any thermal paste by 33%. I think I know the Coke drinking person who told you that. Welly Bob says, oh my god, it's way smaller than it appears on the screen. Yeah, this is United Kingdom, ladies and gentlemen. This is a 1930s house, so it's basically tiny. And I think measurement wise, I think it's like 4 meters that way and about 3.5 that way, but there's a fireplace which cuts into it. So yeah, it's basically...
But it's a lot bigger than new builds.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like maybe what it's like to be in prison. I'm not entirely sure. I feel like Andy Peters. I'm in the broom cupboard at the BBC.
But we don't like BBC.
Ugly Bob says, Jesus, that camera is really close to the edge. Don't sneeze. Yeah, literally the cam. That was the reason why this kind of turned out as it was. If I use a tripod in that corner, because of how tight everything is, if Kath sat there, you can't really do anything. So the tripod was good because you could take it back a bit further and get a little bit of a wider shot, but it just wasn't practical because it gets on kicking stuff as you walk past it all the time. Yes, it was annoying.
We did bring it in occasionally. We have got one, haven't we? Just put there when you do builds. So.
Captain Meets Adventure says, what about a situation comedy set in a small computer wholesaler? I think someone actually did do that. I'm trying to think who it was. There is one on Facebook I see quite often. There's I think it's an Australian guys who do it. There's some sort of gamer shop and they're always having issues with customers. I'm sure I've seen that as well. It'd be nice though. Jay Rich says, hi Mike, Kath and Flame, how you doing? Damn, missed so much of the show. We'll rewatch. You haven't missed much. James Hussein says, Ugly Bob, you're talking to the guy who flings boxes around while his tall glass of beer sits beside his laptop. Yeah, this is true. DS says, Mike, would you review the Redmi AirDots 3 BT earphones, which just came out with a mic test? We have kind of gone away from that. I think the whole headphone thing is kind of died a death. But, yes, I don't know. I might do. I'll see what happens. Matthew Bennett says, I get my Indian from Tamarind when I'm down seeing the family. Oh, Tamarind. That's the one that used to be Tandy, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah, it's nice in there. They stopped selling beer in there, though. It's bring your own now, which is not really the same. But the food in there is excellent.
December before all this, didn't we? Yeah,
we went in there December before lockdown for our Christmas do. And yeah, it's great. Loved it. Captain Me's Adventure says, you need a puppet sidekick. You could have a mini mic that Kath moves the puppet.
I want to get you a bobblehead thing. But they're so expensive.
Dave Bell says that was PC World. Mark Barry says, I used to see a lot of Akasa. Is it Akasa? Yeah, I suppose Akasa. Yeah, see a lot of Akasa stuff in Matt Plins before they went bankrupt. Wild Bill says Vetro paste. That's an interesting one. I didn't know they did paste as well. We have actually got the Vetro cooler, which I've still yet to test. And also, for those of you who've been asking, I know a few of you have, we haven't got the replacement for the up here cooler yet, the one which came through kind of damaged. The reason behind that is essentially I'm trying to let them run down stocks just in case, because I don't want to have to order a third one if the next one comes through damaged as well. If the next one comes through damaged as well, I'm going to say yes, they're all like it here, at least in the country. So we'll see.
Says his is fine.
Yeah, Patrick LaBelle's dead. His was absolutely fine, and there's been one or two of others have said, yep, no problems, mine's been fine. So I'm hoping it is just a glitch. Hugh says, are you getting virus shots in England? Some people are. They seem to be buying a lot of them. The government are spending an absolute ton of money on them, but I don't know if people are actually getting them. Dom says probably...
Flame. I'm not scratching.
Probably those tests are supposed to be run 3 times with the same test just because thermal paste application is not even all the time, but that is madness. Please don't do it. Yeah, I kind of, when I see some of these other YouTube people doing it, I do admit, hats off to them for doing what they do and going that extreme level. But realistically, people don't want to see the kind of really, really tiny, minute differences between thermal applications and whatever it is, or benchmark runs. It's like, just from a review, from my point of view, all I want is someone to say, is it worthwhile getting? Is it any good? Not, well, it's 0.35% faster than that one. It's like, well, I don't really care. That's fine. I'm never going to notice it in the real world. If this comes to something like this one's 50 frames per second, this one's 100 frames per second, then obviously, yes, that is a big chasm of difference, and it makes a lot of sense to go for the faster one if it's the right price, etc. But I think for most people, like doing this testing, realistically, like James said and a few others of you have said as well, ultimately, at the end of the day, there isn't really a bad paste. The worst thing is the application method itself of actually putting the cooler onto the CPU. That is where more people run into problems with mismounted CPU cores onto uneven surfaces, as we've seen with that up here cooler. If you've got a really bad surface and you're mounting to it, doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what paste you use, it's going to suck major ballsack regardless. So yeah, I do agree, we shouldn't really get caught up in the kind of the really small fragments of information and data. For some people, it's really useful. I wanted to do this purely as a way of testing
Yes, there's no graphics cards.
the IONZ paste. And there's no graphics cards for me to do anything with. So yeah, it's kind of like, this is what it's come to. We've gone away from graphics cards in something which actually is useful to working out if this is 3 degrees better than that. What has the world come to? It's ridiculous. Ah, dear. Jay Jones says, what are electric monitors like? I've only bought one so far. I've seen others, and I'm actually really impressed. Really impressed. Given the choice of spending nearly 500 quid on George's monitor or spending 200 quid on my monitor, I take my monitor every single day of the week. It's really good. Glenn says, Jay Jones, I've been using the 95Hz 1440p 27-inch for over a year now. It's been great. Awesome, Glenn. I agree. Electric, I was concerned when they always put in the thing, like you can pay 20 quid to have it checked before it leaves to make sure it's got no dead pixels and stuff. It's like, that worries me immensely already. But they do seem to be okay. I'm tempted to buy another one to replace that old sack of crap, but that thing has seen a fair bit of action. Literally.
You could swap that for mine.
Hmm? Why, don't you like that one?
It's okay.
Swap what one?
That one. Is that one?
I don't think that'll fit. That was huge, isn't it?
Okay.
Huge. Anyway, moving on. Patrick LaBelle says, I'm installing Windows on another computer, the one that had the up here cooler. Hopefully it works out okay. Mild buffers here too. It's probably bloody Angel and George using too much interwebs. Although saying that, I think I have set the outputs of the stream a little on the high side, so let's reduce that a little. It shouldn't affect the overall picture quality. There we go. Bill Butcher, that was a great name. The Vetro V5 cooler is a beast. My 3700X idle's about 27 degrees with it. Tops out at 60 or so. Underload, great temps in a mini ITX case. A 3700X at 27 degrees. Do you live in the North Pole? That's ridiculous. How do you get 27 degrees with it? Although, what's it reading that temperature from? I'll be interested. Because 27 degrees, the 3700X is quite hot anyway. And yeah, 27 degrees C, that is ridiculous. 60 or so under load. Although if it's an ASUS motherboard, it probably is reading, they normally read a little bit higher or lower. They don't do a package temp, they do individual lowest cores.
The Trojan.
The Trojan.
You've got to read it with an Australian accent.
I've got to do it with an Australian accent. I'll get done for racism or something then. Or racial appropriation.
Oh, but it's nice.
Dom says, I agree, Mike. That's why I use the GD900 from AliExpress. 30 grams for less than a fiver, and it's good for its money. MX4 is not much better. Awesome. Hugh says, can't afford graphics cards here. Sold up to $2,000 on Amazon today. Yeah, graphics cards is insane. The Trojan says, I'm reapplying MX4 to my old 1070 Gaming X right now, and all I can see now is mini turds. I've so wanted to do that in an Australian accent, and as I'm saying it, I'm like, no, I refuse to do it. Fractured Life says, Mike, give me a good movie to watch so I stop hunting GPUs. If you've got Amazon Prime, you've got obviously Coming to America 2, which I'm still undecided about that. I don't think it's as good as the first one, but it is one of those kind of, it's a fan pleaser. If you enjoyed the first one, you'll enjoy the second one. Not for the same reasons you enjoyed the first one, but because there's a lot of kind of nods in various directions to various famous people and stuff like that. I'm not going to spoil it in case you haven't watched it, but it's worth watching. Bill Butcher says, Louisiana, USA, we have a decent air conditioning here or we die. Actually, yeah, you do find in drier climates, especially if you've got air conditioning, you do get much better CPU temperatures because of the lack of humidity in the air for some reason. I guess there's a technical reason for that, but not too sure why. Blake says, hey Mike, I guess I missed a lot. Saw your MSI fan video. Thank you for watching it. I'll be interested in a video about Mystic Light. Kids builds of Corsair, RGB RAM, PSU keyboard, mouse, headphones, NZXT 510i and MSI RGB combo. Oh, Blake, you seriously are going to have a headache. If you've got that...
He's already put pain getting it all to work seamlessly.
Yeah. You're probably best off with that. I would say avoid all of the individuals and do as much as you possibly can with OpenRGB. I'm not too sure if you'll get much luck with the Corsair RAM on that. I need to try it actually, but with some, I haven't really got. I'm trying to think what system I can use it on to test out what it'll do. But yeah, OpenRGB is worth a look. James Miscellaneous actually did a video on OpenRGB and kind of various bits and pieces on it, so that might be worth taking a look at. Fractured Life says Tombstone it is. What was that? What did I say? Oh, there was something which is on. Oh, The Matrix and Reloaded and Revelations. They all three of those are on. Something else come back on recently, and I was like, oh, cool, that's back on Amazon Prime Video. What was it? It was like an old film, but I thought, oh, that's cool. No, can't think. Actually,
I deleted it.
I can do it. Oh no, I'm not logged in. Son of a bitch. Prime Video. What's new? New. Top rated, no. No, recently added, yeah. No, I can't find it.
Billy Elliot, that's the one you wanted to watch.
Billy Elliot, yeah, that was it.
Bohemian Rhapsody, I didn't mind that too.
Beverly Hills Cop, that's all back on.
Boys,
Bad Boys as well, that's pretty decent.
The Italian Job.
Stuart Clary says, what's the best method for displaying CPU temperatures? Personally, I've always liked hardware info from CPU-Z. They've always, that's always been fine. I've pretty much put on every single system I've used. You've got other things such as obviously Ryzen Master. Depends what you want to see and where you want to see it. If you want like a little tiny one in the taskbar, or if you just want an app or whatever, there's quite a few different ones to choose from. Main Gun 07 says, howdy. Yeah, plug for James. Yep, definitely got to plug our friends. So, Tristan G, my Ryzen 3900X with Bequiet Dartrock 4 runs at 31C to 57, sometimes higher depending on game demand. Yeah, I think that's where I'm going wrong, because I've got I've got an Asus motherboard on my Ryzen 3900X, and it seems to always, no matter what I do, it seems to spike temperature-wise. I do need to look at the temps, but I'm tempted just to say, actually, sod it and just buy another motherboard, because that X570 Tough Gaming, it's okay, but I want an MSI board on my system for some reason. I really do like that. Bill Butcher says Hardware Info 64 seems to give the most comprehensive readings. Oh god, yeah, Hardware Info 64. I'll read like the temperature of the butthole on a CPU. It's ridiculous how detailed it is. Dave Bell says, was having real problems with 16GB Vengeance LBX kit. There is an on-running thing. I would say, of all the people that get problems with RAM in their systems, the majority of them are with Corsair LPX. Or some form of Corsair RAM. I don't know why it is. They just seem to be so problematic. Whether it's the... No, that's right, thanks. Whether it's the XMP ratings are completely whack or I don't know what it is, but Corsair LPX does give tons and tons of problems, which is a real pain in the backside. Right, I think we've pretty much exhausted the chat for tonight. There will be a brief after-show chat in the Discord chat if you want to join us after. I think we've covered pretty much everything we can do on the terms of this. I'm going to condense down this video and probably turn it into like a 2-minute thing, like, yeah, buy this, it's good, and I'll be done with it. So if you want to see that, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, all that kind of usual stuff. If you're feeling generous, stick a like on the video. It really does help with the YouTube algorithm and trying to get the channel seen. The views do seem to be dropping off for everybody at the moment. There's just something very, very weird going on at YouTube these days, but hopefully it's just a glitch and things will get back to normal soon. Who knows? Maybe it will. What do you think, Kath?
No idea.
No freaking idea. So that is going to wrap it up for tonight. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. Hopefully it hasn't been too boring. Maybe you've learned something. And worst case scenario, essentially, you know, MX4 is pretty decent, and the IONZ is actually worth a look. So that is going to wrap this one up. Thanks for the super chats, all of you. Really do appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by, etc. If you want to have a chat in the Discord after while I'm cleaning away all this crap, you're more than welcome to do so with myself and Kath and some of the other regulars. And yeah, that leaves me with, well, only one thing to do, and that is to say, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.